The first time I saw the broken Rolls Royce Silver Cloud, it didn't feel like just a car. It felt like a secret someone had tried to bury. The chrome was dull, the paint was faded, and the engine looked like it hadn't breathed in decades. Yet something about it pulled me in. Maybe it was the history, maybe it was the mystery, or maybe it was the way my neighbor, the one everyone quietly called the HOA Karen, stood at her window staring at it like she already owned it. I didn't know her well, but I knew this. Every time something happened in our neighborhood, she was somehow involved. And not always in the good way. I brought the car home on a quiet Sunday morning, rolling it down my driveway with the kind of excitement you get when you feel a story beginning. The neighborhood was still waking up, except for her. She was already on her porch, arms crossed, eyes locked on the silver cloud. No hello, no smile. Just a look that felt too knowing, too interested, too intense for a stranger watching someone restore an old classic. I tried ignoring it at first. All I wanted was to bring the old Rolls back to life, piece by piece, bolt by bolt. I pictured myself wiping the chrome until it shined again, hearing the engine roar like it once did, maybe even driving it down the road with the windows down. But the more I worked on it, the more she hovered around. Sometimes she'd walk past and slow down. Sometimes she'd take pictures. And sometimes she'd stand still, watching me as if she was waiting for me to find something. Or maybe she was afraid I would. There was something in the way she looked at that car. Not curiosity, something heavier, something personal. 2 days into the restoration, she walked right up to me for the first time. No greetings, no introductions, just a cold, direct sentence. That car, it shouldn't be here. Her voice didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like a claim. I asked her why she cared. She hesitated for a long second, glancing at the silver cloud like it was a memory she didn't want to face. Then she opened her mouth to speak, just as a folded slip of paper slid out from under the car's torn seat and dropped to the ground at my feet. Her eyes widened the moment she saw it, and before I could even pick it up, she stepped back like she'd seen a ghost. When I bent down and picked up that folded slip of paper, the world around me seemed to quiet. The street noise faded, the breeze stilled. Even the tools beside me felt heavier in my hands. My neighbor, Karen, though I didn't know her real name yet, stood frozen a few feet away, her eyes locked on the paper like it carried something she tried to forget or hide. I unfolded it slowly, expecting maybe an old mechanic's note or a receipt from decades ago. But it wasn't that. It was a photograph, aged, yellow at the edges, the ink slightly faded. A much younger woman stood beside the same Rolls Royce Silver Cloud, smiling proudly in a way that looked nothing like the rigid, tense person beside me now. And next to her stood a man I didn't recognize, his hand resting on her shoulder, both of them glowing with the kind of happiness that only comes from ownership or love. The strange part? The woman in the photo looked like her. Same eyes, same smile, just softer, untouched by whatever hardened her into the HOA enforcer she was now. Before I could ask anything, she whispered, "Where did you find that?" Her voice shook. Not with anger this time, but something closer to fear or regret. It didn't match the woman who patrolled the neighborhood measuring lawns and reporting paint colors to the HOA board. This was someone else. Someone connected to the car in a way she didn't want to explain. I asked if the woman was her. She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You don't understand what you're restoring," she said. "That car carries pieces of a life I left behind. Pieces that were supposed to stay buried." Her words made the air heavier. I tried to steady myself, leaning against the silver cloud's fender. The car creaked softly beneath my hand. For the first time, I felt like it wasn't just a restoration project. It was a wound. A story that wasn't mine but somehow had landed in my driveway. When she finally lifted her eyes to meet mine, something in her expression flickered. Not anger, not accusation, something like a plea. She looked at the photograph again, then at the car, then back at me, as if unsure which one she feared more. Before I could say anything, she turned abruptly and walked away. But halfway down the driveway, she stopped, hesitated, and whispered something I wasn't sure I was meant to hear. "It's not safe to dig into this." And then she disappeared behind her door, leaving me with the photo, the car, and a growing sense that I had stepped into a story already in motion. One she desperately wished I wouldn't uncover. I barely slept that night. The photo sat on my workbench beneath a dim lamp, its faded colors pulling me into a life I didn't know. A life Karen clearly didn't want me to know. I kept replaying her words. Asterisk, it's not safe to dig into this. Asterisk, the warning didn't feel like a threat. Felt like a confession. But a confession to what? By morning, something in me shifted. Restoring the Rolls Royce Silver Cloud wasn't just about reviving a classic anymore. It felt like uncovering a story trapped beneath metal and dust. And even though I knew I shouldn't, I kept going. As I lifted the hood to check the wiring, I noticed something new. A thin chain tangled around a rusted bracket. A necklace, or what used to be one. The pendant had the initials LM carved into it, delicate and worn. Another piece of a puzzle that wasn't mine. Just as I was turning it over in my hand, a voice startled me. "You shouldn't keep digging." Not Karen. This time it was her sister, a woman I'd barely seen except in passing. She stood on the sidewalk, arms wrapped around herself, almost like she'd rushed out before convincing herself it was a bad idea. Her eyes darted toward Karen's house before settling on me. "She's not trying to control you. She's trying to protect you. That car. It ruined more than one life." I asked her what she meant, but she only shook her head, lowering her voice. "If my sister finds out I'm talking to you, she'll shut down. She always does when the past comes back." That was the second time someone told me to stop, which only made the curiosity burn hotter. Over the next few days, smaller cracks in Karen's facade started to show. She walked slower when passing the driveway, her eyes lingering on the silver cloud longer than before. Sometimes she looked angry, sometimes heartbroken, and sometimes guilty, like she was carrying a burden no one else could see. A subplot began forming in my mind. If Karen wasn't scared of me, then who was she scared of? Or what? Meanwhile, the HOA board, famous for sticking their noses into every inch of property, had started circling like vultures. I caught two board members taking photos of my driveway, whispering like the car was some kind of violation. Every time I stepped outside, someone was watching. Sometimes from porches, sometimes from behind curtains. Word had spread. The Silver Cloud wasn't just a car. It was gossip. It was history. It was danger. And in the middle of all that, I found myself torn. Part of me wanted to respect Karen's boundaries, leave the past alone, and just finish the restoration. But another part, the stubborn, curious part, felt like she deserved to have her story understood, even if she didn't want it told. The moral dilemma grew heavier when I caught Karen standing in her driveway one evening, staring at the rolls with an expression I had never seen on her before. Fear mixed with longing, the look of someone who'd run from a past that hadn't stopped chasing her. When she realized I was watching, she didn't look away. Instead, she whispered, "If you find the key, everything changes." Then she turned and hurried inside, leaving me with a single haunting question. What key? And what would it unlock? The next morning felt different. Heavy, charged, like the air was waiting for something to break. I opened the garage and stared at the Rolls Royce Silver Cloud, its metal catching the early light. Every bolt I touched felt connected to something deeper now. Something alive. Karen's words kept echoing inside me. If you find the key, everything changes. What key? To what? And why did she sound afraid of it? I worked faster than usual, driven by a mix of curiosity and dread. I pulled up the carpeting beneath the driver's seat, tugged at the rusted metal trim, checked every nook I had ignored before. Nothing. But the feeling wouldn't leave me. Something was here, hidden. At noon, as I leaned into the back seat, my hand brushed against a loose panel. A hollow sound. I pushed. It shifted. A small compartment snapped open. Inside was a metal tin. Dusty. Cold. Unlabeled. My pulse kicked. Hard. Just as my fingers closed around it, a sharp voice cut across the driveway. "Stop, Karen." She rushed toward me, breath uneven, eyes locked on the tin with a terror that didn't belong to an HOA rule enforcer. This was personal, deep, the kind of fear that came from memories, not regulations. She reached for the tin, but I stepped back instinctively. Her hands trembled. Her lips pressed tight like she was holding back something she couldn't say. "That doesn't belong to you," she whispered. I asked her if it belonged to the woman in the photo. She froze. Her jaw tightened. Then she said softly, "It belonged to someone I loved, someone who disappeared the night this car did." The words hit harder than I expected. I felt the weight in her voice, the kind people carry for years, buried deep so no one can touch it. For the first time, she didn't sound like the neighborhood watchdog or the notorious HOA Karen. She sounded human, broken. I opened my mouth to ask more, but a car door slammed across the street. Another HOA board member. Then another. They began gathering, 3, 4, 5 of them, standing on the sidewalk like a silent jury. Karen noticed them too. Her expression shifted instantly from vulnerable to guarded. The wall went back up. "You can't open that," she muttered, stepping closer. "Not with them watching." I looked at the tin again. Its edges were dented. Its lock snapped decades ago. Whatever was inside had waited a long time to be found. Karen lowered her voice to a shaky whisper. "If you open it, everything changes. For both of us." Her eyes flicked toward the HOA board, then back at the tin, then at me. And in that moment, I realized something unsettling. They weren't watching me. They were watching the car, the tin, the truth, and they were waiting. For what? I didn't know. Yet Karen's warning echoed in my head, but the tin felt heavier in my hands now, like it was pulling me toward a truth I hadn't asked for. The HOA board members kept their distance, pretending to inspect the sidewalk while clearly tracking every move I made. Their quiet presence felt wrong. Too coordinated. Too interested. That's when the twist hit. Before I could even decide whether to open the tin, Karen's sister appeared again. But this time she wasn't calm or cautious. She ran across the street, breathless, eyes wide with panic. She grabbed my arm and whispered, "Don't trust her. Don't trust anything she's told you. She's hiding the wrong story." Karen's face drained of color. Her sister continued, voice trembling. "Tell him the truth. Tell him what really happened the night the Silver Cloud disappeared." Karen stepped back as if struck. "No," she muttered. "Not now." But her sister shook her head. "He deserves to know before they make their move." The HOA board members took a small step closer, just enough to show they were listening, or waiting. I felt the ground shift under the story I thought I was uncovering. This wasn't just about a lost car or a broken relationship. This was bigger, messier, dangerous. Karen's sister looked at me like she was trying to push the truth into my hands. "She didn't lose the car," she said quietly. "She hid it. She hid it because she was protecting someone. Someone the HOA didn't want around." Karen shut her eyes, exhaling sharply, like the secret she'd buried for years had just clawed to the surface. "And that tin?" her sister added, pointing at the metal box. "It's not evidence. It's leverage. The only leverage she ever had against them." My pulse hammered. The HOA board suddenly stepped closer in unison, their expression tightening. Their president, stern, unblinking, spoke for the first time. "You found property that belongs to the association," he said coldly. "Hand it over." Karen's entire body moved before her mind did. She grabbed my wrist, squeezing hard, her voice almost breaking as she whispered, "If you give it to them, I lose everything." Her sister stepped between us and the board. "And if he doesn't give it to them, they'll turn on him next." A betrayal, a warning, a threat, all unfolding in seconds. I looked at the tin, the women, the board members tightening their circle. And I realized the real twist. I wasn't restoring the car anymore. I was trapped in the middle of a battle that started long before I ever touched it. And the tin, whatever was inside, had just made me the next target. The tin felt heavier than ever, like every secret inside it was pressing against my palm. insisting to be released. The HOA board inched closer, the two sisters standing on either side of me, torn between fear and defiance. For a moment, no one spoke. Every breath, every flicker of movement felt like it could snap something fragile and final. I opened the tin. Not dramatically, not with a flourish. Just a slow, steady lift of the lid because the truth didn't need theatrics. It needed air. Inside were three things: a set of old car keys, a handwritten letter, and a signed deed transferring ownership of the Rolls Royce Silver Cloud not to the HOA, not to the previous owner, but to Karen. The board surged forward, but I raised a hand, the letter unfolding in my grip. The handwriting was shaky but clear, belonging to the man in the photograph. Karen's husband, the one who had disappeared. The letter explained everything. He had hidden the car the night he vanished, terrified after discovering that certain HOA members were laundering money through community improvements. He feared they would silence him. So he left everything, the car, the evidence, the final key, to Karen, trusting she would know what to do when the time came. The necklace with the initials LM? His first gift to her. The photograph in the Silver Cloud? Their anniversary picture taken the day he bought the car. The car wasn't his escape. It was his message. Karen's breath broke. Her knees nearly buckled as she read the last line. Asterisk. If they come for you, use the car. Use the truth. And trust no one from the board. Asterisk. Her sister held her as she cried. Quietly, painfully. Not with weakness but with the relief of a weight carried too long. The HOA president lunged to grab the documents. But this time, Karen stepped forward, clutching the deed with a steadiness I hadn't seen in her before. It's over, she said. And it's my turn to protect what he tried to save. I called the police. Not in anger. In justice. What followed unfolded quickly. Investigations, questioning, evidence pulled from the letter, and the car's hidden compartments. The board members' faces said everything long before the officers reached for their cuffs. But the real twist came later. When the chaos settled, Karen pressed the Silver Cloud's key into my hand. You restored more than the car, she whispered. You restored the truth. Keep it running. Keep his story alive. I thought she meant temporarily. I thought she meant until the paperwork cleared. But no. The deed listed her as the owner. And at the bottom, in fresh ink, another name had been added: mine. When the dust finally settled, the neighborhood felt quieter, different, almost like it was learning to breathe again. The police cars eventually rolled away, the flashing lights fading from Karen's windows, leaving behind a stillness that wasn't empty, just overdue. The HOA board members involved in the scheme were removed and charged. The remaining members distanced themselves quickly, trying to rebuild trust in a community that suddenly saw them in a new light. But the biggest change wasn't in the neighborhood. It was in Karen. For weeks after the truth came out, she walked a little differently, lighter, without that invisible armor she'd worn for so long. The car she once feared to even look at now sat in my garage, polished and whole, its engine humming like a heartbeat restored. She visited sometimes, not to supervise, not to interfere, but simply to watch the Silver Cloud shine again. One afternoon, while I was tuning the engine, she showed up holding the old necklace, the pendant with the initials OM. She placed it gently on the dashboard, tracing the metal with her thumb. He always wanted this car to be more than just a memory, she said softly. He wanted it to be a reminder that truth, even buried, finds a way. Her sister stood beside her, offering a quiet smile that spoke of healing. Finally, after years of distance and fear, the past hadn't vanished, but it no longer chased them. It stood beside them instead, acknowledged and accepted. As for me, I kept the car running, not as a trophy, not as a mystery solved, but as a symbol of restoration in every sense of the word. Restoring the Silver Cloud had been about metal, paint, and wiring, but it had also been about people, forgiveness, and truth. Some nights, I take the car out onto the open road. The headlights spill across the asphalt like a path forward, the engine carrying the weight of a story finally set free. I think about the man who hid the car to save the woman he loved. I think about Karen finding her voice again, and I think about how something broken, whether engine or heart, can be rebuilt with patience, honesty, and help from the right people. If there's one lesson I want viewers to take from this entire journey, it's this. Restoration isn't just fixing what's damaged. It's choosing to face what hurts and finding strength in what remains. If this story moved you, inspired you, or simply made you see people differently, do me a favor, hit the like button, leave a comment, and share this video with someone who needs a reminder. Sometimes the past doesn't return to haunt us. Sometimes it returns to set us free.